Son Gohan. In his younger years, he'd be considered a hero by any standard. He defended the Earth countless times and has been giving his all to keep the peace since the age of 5. A man who was raised in a time of near constant war and is solely responsible for years upon years of peace. And despite this, I'm gonna try to convince you that he's not a hero. I believe that after the Buu saga, Gohan would be considered a disappointment when looked through the lens of the Spider-Man character Uncle Ben's beliefs, that with great power comes great responsibility. And while it might seem utterly unrelated, I promise I'll get there. First, in order to establish that Gohan doesn't live up to the expectations of how with great power comes responsibility, first we must establish what exactly that means by showing the result of living by it. And for that, we should look no further than the origin of the quote himself, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a character who's been adapted countless times in dozens of forms of media, but in every single one, the story of his early days as a hero revolve around him not understanding the responsibility that comes with such power. He's reckless, rude, and selfish, and, at least in the movies, he acts with such childish impunity that once he receives his powers, it leads to the death of his father figure, Uncle Ben. Going forward, I'm going to use the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire as the specific example, but just keep in mind that the general themes and ideas are pretty much the same throughout most Spider-Man stories revolving around Peter Parker. Before Peter Parker had any powers, he's portrayed as a loser. The girl he's in love with has no interest in him, his family is dirt poor, and he's relentlessly bullied every day at school. Peter's life is shown to be utterly depressing, and in every sense of the word, he is powerless. But while on a school trip, before he could swat it off, he was bitten by a radioactive spider, giving him superhuman abilities, including super strength, super sight, reflexes, instant abs, the ability to shoot webs from his wrists, and the ability to climb on walls. After testing out these powers, what do you think the first thing Peter does with them is? Obviously, he stunts on the school bully and starts fighting people for money. He has no idea the burden that these powers should have placed on him, and he acts selfishly, which is completely understandable given if you or I were in his situation, we'd probably act the same. By this point, Peter had already heard his Uncle Ben speak the words, "With great power comes great responsibility," but the concept hadn't really taken root for him, and it's there, during his underground wrestling match, where he lets something happen that will go on to haunt him for the rest of his life. He refuses to take action. The promoter for the event stiffed Peter on his payment, thinking he could take advantage of the young boy. Incidentally, he was robbed within minutes of doing so, and the robber ran right past Peter, who, due to his spider sense, must have had plenty of time to decide whether or not to stop him. But the important part here is that he chose not to. He had the power to act, but he decided to be selfish and get back at the promoter by letting the criminal get away. And whether due to karma or some cruel twist of fate, Uncle Ben had been trying to find Peter and just so happened to be in that criminal's way. He tried to steal Ben's car to escape from the robbery, and Ben refused, and during the inciting struggle, he was shot and killed. Peter, having just left the building, held Ben in his final moments, realizing that it was his fault that that criminal had the chance to kill him. Peter, full of rage and searching for revenge, followed closely after the man who'd killed his uncle. He caught up with him and, whether intentional or not, he caused the man to fall to his death. This incident shaped Peter Parker and truly made him into Spider-Man. From this moment forward, he realized that if you have the power to act, you must. He began to fully embody that famous quote said by his Uncle Ben. This isn't to say that his life is without struggle from here on out. Far from it, in fact. Having his spider powers directly caused his life to become more and more difficult day in and day out. His absence strained his relationship with Mary Jane. His performance in college suffered greatly, and he just could not hold a job. And this is where we pick up with Peter in Spider-Man 2. The responsibility of being Spider-Man has destroyed his personal life. That's what this movie's trying to get at. That's the burden that one with great power must bear. Responsibility refers not only to the responsibility to act, but how you must prioritize your duty over your personal life. Despite the fact that not only is there no reward, but in Spider-Man's case, the city hates him. Later on in the movie, a mental block comes up due to his declining quality of life, and Peter sees a way out. He's undergone so much stress due to the toll that it takes on him to be Spider-Man that he ended up losing his powers. To Peter, this was a godsend. He no longer had to prop New York up on his shoulders, and he finally had the chance to be a regular, functioning adult. But the important part is that Peter's better than that. Upon coming across a burning building, and still without his powers, he thoughtlessly ran inside to save a child that was trapped. He could act, so he did. He had to. That's just who Peter Parker is. Though, because he'd given up his powers, he wasn't able to save a second child that was trapped inside the building. This moment awoke something in Peter that may have been obvious to those around. He can't be the type of person to just stand by and watch. He has to help. He has a responsibility to help. Soon after this revelation, he regained his powers, and because Peter Parker is, at his core, a hero, he takes up the mantle of Spider-Man once more. This time, fully knowing what he would have to sacrifice, and choosing to do it anyway. That's what it means to live by this mantra, to truly be a hero by this definition. If you're able to help save the world, save a group of people, save even one person, you have a responsibility, a moral obligation to go out of your way, no matter the personal sacrifice, to do so. That's who Peter Parker is, and that's what a hero is. And by that definition, Son Gohan in his adult years is not a hero. Gohan has always been a character defined by his power. The first time we see him at 4 years old, he's a timid and shy kid, barely able to face his father's old friends for the first time. Soon after, he was kidnapped by his alien uncle after having just found out that he had an alien uncle that showed up and nearly killed his father. He was held ransom and had to watch as Raditz ruthlessly beat up his father and the other strongest fighter in the world at the time. Upon seeing this, and in a fit of unbridled rage, Gohan was able to deal a decisive blow to Raditz, who Goku could barely lay a scratch on. From this moment on, Gohan becomes known for his potential. When his anger reaches a boiling point, he can pull off insane feats of strength. One of the most unbelievable moments being when he damaged the second form of the Emperor of the Universe at the age of 5. His potential puts him on a prime spot to one day surpass his father as the strongest fighter in the world. Though at a young age, one of his biggest struggles was with the fact that he just didn't want to fight. He wasn't passionate about it at all. To Gohan, fighting was a means to an end, and this, of course, came to a head during his fight with Cell. By the time the Cell games came around, Gohan had trained alongside his father, ascending to the level of a Super Saiyan. While up to this point Gohan was capable of holding his own in a fight, he had been clearly portrayed as a lower tier character on the Z Fighters in terms of power. By the time he leaves the hyperbolic time chamber, this is the first time in his life that he's able to consistently draw out strength on the level of the top tier fighters in the story arc. Heading into the fight, and even during the tournament, Gohan still believed that his father was stronger than him. When Goku and Cell fought each other, they were both going at full strength, and yet despite this, Gohan thought they were heavily suppressed. After realizing that they were going at full power, and having his father conceded, setting him up to be the next one to fight Cell, Gohan realized that he might be able to win. Now here I originally wrote an entire rant defending Goku's decision to send in Gohan to fight Cell, but it really doesn't fit with the themes of today's video, so I'm not going to include it, but one day I promise I will fully go off about this. During this fight, Gohan still doesn't want to act with violence. Despite what Cell has done to the innocent citizens of Earth and his friends, and even though defeating Cell means protecting what's dear to him, Gohan still doesn't let himself give in to that uncontrollable anger that's been his crutch so far in the series. Cell continued to beat down on Gohan before he eventually awoke and became a Super Saiyan 2. Importantly, it's Android 16's speech that finally makes Gohan realize that if it's for the right cause, it's okay to give in to his anger. He realizes in this moment the immense power and responsibility that he's been born with, making it his responsibility to protect Earth. Like it or not, he's the only person in the universe capable of defeating Cell and saving the world. Here, Gohan has completed the character arc that was laid out for him in the beginning of the story. He's become a capable fighter who's willing to do what he must to protect what's right. But the fight isn't over yet, and Gohan still has one more flaw to work through. Having become strong enough to toy with Cell, Gohan's put in a position he's never been in before. With all the power he needs, but no idea how to use it, Gohan makes the same mistake that Peter Parker makes when he first gained his powers. He refused to act when given the chance. Gohan had such an overpowering advantage over Cell that he allowed his hubris to get the better of him, and in a moment of overconfidence, Thinking back to all the pain Cell has caused the people of Earth, he refused to let his death be quick. Instead, he decided that Cell must suffer for all the pain he's caused to both Gohan and humanity as a whole. This moment of hesitation gave Cell the chance to initiate a self-destruct. After having thrown up Android 18 and reverting back to his semi-perfect form, he blows up like a balloon, making it clear that if he's allowed to go through with this, the whole world will be destroyed. The Z-Fighters are put in an impossible situation, and Goku, the hero that he is, made a split decision that ended up saving everybody. Because Gohan didn't kill Cell when given the chance, Goku was made to sacrifice himself, and upon his return, Cell killed future Trunks too. Goku appeared to Gohan from the afterlife, encouraging him to bring out all that latent power he had left to counter Cell's Kamehameha, which he explicitly stated was strong enough to erase the entire solar system. Ultimately, Gohan is able to defeat Cell, but not without the group sustaining heavy casualties. In this moment, he learns that indecisiveness is just as bad as actively deciding not to fight in the first place. So he makes a promise to himself that he will never, ever hesitate again. The original intention of this fight's resolution is that Gohan has finally realized his full potential as both a fighter and a character. And while that aspect of the scene would go on to be retconned pretty quickly in the next arc, and repeatedly throughout Super, the more important piece of growth that Gohan is offered in the scene, for the purposes of this video, is that he overcomes his apprehension about fighting for the sake of what's good. Now he has the experience to know that he must act decisively, and he has the willingness to do so too. So theoretically, from here on out, Gohan should not hesitate to do what must be done. With the end of the Cell Saga, Gohan has everything he needs to be a true hero, and live up to the expectations of power and responsibility. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that Gohan is mishandled in the Buu Saga, but it is really strange to me that after an arc where the entire conclusion revolved around Gohan's completion as a character, his role in the next arc is that of failure and pointing out further flaws that he still has to work through before he's ready. It's not necessarily a bad direction to take his character, since if he had just become the protector of the world and succeeded without any resistance or growing pains, it would have been incredibly unsatisfying. But instead of letting Gohan work through his issues and come out the other side as a better character like he'd done in the previous arc, Goku ended up coming back to retake his spot as the main character and fix Gohan's mistake himself. It's an odd direction for sure, and who knows, maybe Gohan continuing to be the main character and all the deaths in the Buu Saga coming from his failure as a new hero, maybe that might have ended up being a better direction for the Buu Saga, since I know a lot of people aren't happy with it. But who knows, I'm not a famous mangaka, I really don't have any place critiquing one. After the Cell Saga, Gohan had created an era of peace, during which he got complacent. The flaw of Gohan's that ends up cropping up during this arc is that while he has all the tools to be a hero, he doesn't have any experience in being the sole protector. And we can sit here and argue all day about whether he should have known better. Gohan had no reason to believe that a power stronger than what he wielded against Cell would ever be needed. He didn't have that level of experience and foresight that Goku had to know that he must always be training and getting stronger. And that's why he had fallen down to such a level where he wasn't able to stop Buu from being revived. Interestingly, the way this saga starts makes it seem like it's going to be a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. From the previous generation, Goku and Vegeta, to the future generation, Gohan, Goten, and Trunks. But if you look at the story through this lens, you come away with the implication that the future generation messed up so badly that the older generation had to come right back and fix all their mistakes the second that a serious threat appears. This gets even worse in Super, where Gohan was heavily sidelined, which we'll talk about later, and Goten and Trunks are barely even side characters. After Gohan fails to prevent Buu's revival, he reflects on how his complacency had been an issue. It wasn't out of any malice or overconfidence, he simply didn't know that he needed to keep improving. A flaw similar to that of Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2 when he lost his powers. He simply assumed that the world would somehow be okay without his input, that nothing would ever happen that he couldn't handle without the powers. But just like the child that Peter couldn't save from that burning building, Buu's revival is a wake-up call that Gohan had to continue improving. He couldn't get comfortable with his life. The fact that Gohan lacked a drive for improvement directly led to the destruction of the entire Earth, and almost the whole galaxy. Now Gohan understands that he must always strive to be better, and he's made a promise to do so. He's acknowledged that he might not always have enough power to be able to act, and because of that, he will always have to strive to be as strong as possible so that he can handle what comes next. So of course, logically, where should we next see his progression as a character? Resurrection of F, the next piece of major development for Gohan. The last time we saw him, Gohan promised himself that he would never stop training and always work towards achieving the pinnacle of his power. So what has he been doing in the time since? He gave up fighting and training in the pursuit of study. A gross rejection of personal accountability and responsibility. Gohan does exactly what he disavowed the last time he showed up in the story. Spitting in the face of the very concept of responsibility and character growth, he actively chose his personal success and satisfaction over what is now, consistently, the fate of the universe. During Frieza's attack on Earth, Gohan's refusal to keep up with training directly led to the near-death of Piccolo, and if not for Goku and Vegeta once again showing up last minute to fix his mistakes, the fate of the Earth was at stake. Gohan was responsible for making sure he could defeat whatever enemy might come next, and he didn't. This is the moment where, from here on out, I don't think you could call Gohan a hero by the definition we've been using. He is responsible for keeping himself strong. He's acknowledged as much himself at the end of the Buu saga, but he just doesn't live up to that promise that he made. He actively chooses his personal life and happiness over being a protector. This version of Gohan is such an incredibly selfish character, and antithetical to the entire concept of a hero. This is the core of Gohan's characterization in Super. He's constantly slacking on his training, repeating the same tired storyline that he went through in the Buu saga, where he decides not to train, finds out he shouldn't have done that, is barely saved by Goku and Vegeta, then promises to train again, only to give up by the next time you see him. At this point, Gohan's already acknowledged the responsibility that his potential for growth implies, and he's learned every lesson he should need in order to be an effective hero. But he somehow makes the conscious choice to revert back to a decision that's shown twice at this point in the story, and once more later on, to put his friends' and family's lives at risk. He continues to choose not to live up to the responsibility that he's been tasked with through his potential at birth. In effect, this is the equivalent of Spider-Man 3 opening up with Peter Parker choosing to give up his powers again. It makes no sense with the way that he's been characterized up to this point, and it insults the very idea of a hero by implying that we should call him one. Following Gohan's embarrassing performance during Resurrection of F, and complete inconsequentiality during the Universe 6 tournament and Goku Black arcs, Gohan finally decides to do what he said he was going to do 6 years ago at the end of the Buu arc, and he starts to train again. In practicing for the tournament, Gohan was even able to regain his ultimate form, and he held his own in a sparring match against Goku. Goku even decided to make Gohan the team leader for the incoming Tournament of Power. Later on, during the tournament, Gohan was a pretty consistent player, holding his own against many of the powerful foes he had to face. In the manga, he even defeated one of the top tiers in the tournament, Kefla. While it took a while to get here, in reality this is what Gohan should have done directly after the Buu saga. Hopefully, this is a sign that his characterization in early Super was just an accidental little blip, and not the way he'll be handled going forward. Gohan has finally began to act like a hero. He understands what's at stake, and with each enemy that shows up, it's important that he's able to help dispatch them. He seems to finally understand his responsibility, and is finally taking it seriously. So let's see what comes next for Gohan, now that he understands the implications of not training. And once again, as if it hasn't been proven over and over that Gohan's power is needed, as if he's learned nothing from his failures, he again makes the active choice to stop training. And this time the result is, in my opinion, way worse than before. When Piccolo visits Gohan's house in disguise, he suggests that Gohan can't even sense his energy, something he was able to do even back when he fought Nappa, which, let's be completely transparent, Gohan was 5 years old then. Piccolo also suggests that the weighted clothing was too heavy for him, saying specifically that it was light on him as a kid, implying once again that Gohan has somehow gotten weaker now than he was during the Saiyan invasion? The double confirmation means to me that that's what's intended when reading this situation, that despite countless times where Gohan not training has directly put the fate of the world, including his family, at stake, Gohan still refuses to keep up with his training. And the worst part of it all? When Piccolo asks Gohan what he would do if another strong enemy shows up, he asks Piccolo if he seriously thinks that would ever happen. As if it hasn't already happened 26 times in his life. As if his father didn't decide to stay dead for 7 years specifically because this does happen a lot. Oh, you think 26 times is too many times that someone strong enough to threaten the Z Fighters has shown up in Dragon Ball during Gohan's lifetime. Raditz, Nappa and Vegeta, Zarbon and Dodoria, the Ginyu Force, Frieza a second time now with King Cold, Androids 19 and 20, Androids 17 and 18, Android 16, Cell, Babidi and Dabura, Boo, Beerus, Frieza a third time, Champa in Universe 6, Goku Black and Zamasu, literally 70 other fighters in the tournament power, but mainly Jiren, Anilaza, Toppo, and Kefla. Broly, Miras, Moro, Granola, Gas, and Frieza a fourth time, which is only months if not weeks before this, and by the way, Black Frieza is still alive. So not only does it happen a lot, but it is actively in the process of happening. There is currently a threat out there that Goku and Vegeta cannot defeat. My point is, Gohan acting like Piccolo is the weird one for being ready in case another massive threat shows up is not only incredibly out of character, but also a decidedly stupid thing to say given how life works in Dragon Ball. And the fact that I didn't even count every character that's ever threatened the Z Fighters' lives, just the amount of times a strong villain or group of villains has shown up during Gohan's lifetime, that's already more people than years Gohan has been alive, given the fact that he's 27 to 28 by the end of Z, and this is a year earlier, making him 26 to 27. But of course, despite this, literally by the end of the day, Gohan is able to go from weaker than he was at 5 years old, around planetary in strength, to arguably stronger than Goku and Vegeta, who are massively above the baseline for multiversal by this point. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration. I'm not really sure the most common power scale for Goku and Vegeta, but I see people put them around there a lot. Dragon Ball Z is meant to represent the idea that hard work will always outweigh pure talent. That's why Vegeta couldn't defeat Goku during their fight in the Saiyan saga. That's the entire reason Vegeta was categorized as an antagonist in a literary sense, because Vegeta thought his status as an elite warrior would automatically mean he's stronger than Goku. But if that's the case, if hard work will always outweigh talent, how come in the manga Gohan is now implied to be stronger than Goku, despite no effort on his end to improve, and in fact a repeated pattern of giving up and prioritizing studying ants over saving the universe? Gohan in Dragon Ball Super is not a hero. He doesn't live up to the responsibility that his potential burdens him with. He shows himself time and time again in Super to be an opposite of Peter Parker, as he'll always choose his personal life over his responsibility. And the way that he's been written spits in the face of the entire messaging behind the story, mainly reflected through Vegeta's story throughout Z. The common argument against this criticism seems to be, oh, but Gohan's happy, or the common meme of Dragon Ball fans getting mad at Gohan for living a happy life with his family. And you know what? Yeah, Gohan living a peaceful life with his family does bother me. What a lot of people ignore is the fact that fighting is not a hobby for Gohan, but he is consistently one of the very few people capable of stopping the planet from exploding. And I would argue that making sure there's one more person who can prevent Earth from blowing up is way more important than a research paper on ants. And frankly, I really don't know why more Dragon Ball fans don't get that. Protecting your family should be of the utmost priority to everybody. And clearly, modern Dragon Ball's interpretation of Gohan would rather study and research his hyperfixations than keep his family safe. And I really just can't get behind that. I want to be clear, I love Dragon Ball Z, and Gohan's development up until the Cell Saga is incredibly satisfying. But of all the characters who have been mishandled in modern Dragon Ball, Gohan's mischaracterization is a close second for the one that's disappointed me the most in modern Dragon Ball. Second only to Vegeta, which I promise there will be a video about at some point. Also, oh my lord, did the last video go crazy. As I'm writing this, it has 8.4 thousand views, which is 4.42 times as many as the most viewed video I've ever posted before that on past deleted YouTube channels, and somewhere around 100 times as much as my second most viewed video from before this channel. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I've always wanted to be able to post on YouTube and discuss with the comments, so it really means the world to me that you all allowed me to do that in the last video. As always, if there's something you thought I could have done better with this video or any of my other videos, please let me know, because I always want to make the best videos I can for you. You can also check out my Discord server from the link in the description. I'm always on there, so if you ever wanted to ask me anything about videos, or Dragon Ball Z, or Sekiro, or whatever else, I'll be on there. That's it for me today. I'll see you next time. Peace.